The monitors beeped steadily in the sterile hospital room as Elaine Winthrop gazed out the window at the Atlanta skyline. Her once robust frame had withered beneath the hospital gown, but her emerald eyes retained their characteristic intensity. Brookhaven Memorial Hospital's premier suite offered all the comforts money could buy: fresh flowers, tasteful artwork, a private nurse's station, yet nothing could disguise the truth hanging over the room like a shroud. Elaine was dying. "Mrs. Winthrop, your vitals are looking stable this morning," Dr. Patel said, reviewing her chart. "Is there anything I can get you for comfort?" Elaine's gaze remained fixed on the window. "How long?" she asked simply. Dr. Patel's professional demeanor softened. "A few days, perhaps a week." Garrison Winthrop, seated in the leather armchair beside the bed, cleared his throat. At 70, he still cut an impressive figure, silver hair impeccably styled, his custom suit barely concealing the athletic build he maintained through religiously attended tennis matches and golf games. Anyone observing would see a devoted husband devastated by his wife's terminal diagnosis. Only Elaine knew better. "I'd like some privacy with my husband," Elaine said, her voice surprisingly strong, despite the cancer ravaging her body. Once alone, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Garrison moved to take her hand, but Elaine subtly withdrew it. 42 years, she said, each word measured. "We've been married 42 years, Garrison, nearly half a century building Winthrop Realty into an empire. And you've been by my side every step," Garrison replied, his charismatic smile appearing reflexively. "You should rest, darling. Conserve your strength." "For what?" Elaine's laugh was brittle. "There's no miracle recovery coming, which is why I've called Richard. He'll be here this afternoon." Garrison stiffened. "Our attorney?" "All our affairs are in order, Elaine. The will, the succession plan for the company." "It's not about the will, not exactly." Elaine turned to face him fully for the first time. "I need to make some amendments while I still can." "Amendments?" Garrison's voice took on an edge. "What kind of amendments?" The intercom buzzed before she could answer. "Mrs. Winthrop, your son is here." Austin Winthrop entered the room, bringing with him the scent of fresh air and expensive cologne. At 38, he had inherited his father's height and his mother's perceptive gaze. Living in Seattle, where he ran the West Coast division of Winthrop Realty, Austin's visits had been infrequent during his mother's 8-month battle with cancer. The guilt was evident in the careful way he approached her bed. "Mom," he said, bending to kiss her cheek, "you look stronger today." "I've been conserving my energy," she replied with a small smile. "Your father and I were just discussing some business matters." Austin glanced between them, sensing the tension. "Should I come back later?" "No," Elaine said firmly. "Stay. Your father was about to leave to prepare for a meeting with Richard this afternoon." Garrison's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Of course. I'll see you both later." He brushed a mechanical kiss on Elaine's forehead before departing. Once the door closed, Austin pulled a chair closer. "What's going on, Mom? I haven't seen Dad that rattled in years." Elaine took a labored breath. "I need to tell you something, Austin. Something I've kept hidden for a very long time." "Mom, you don't need to—" "I do." Her voice gained strength. "Your father has been unfaithful throughout our marriage." Austin's expression didn't change. "I know." Now it was Elaine's turn to look surprised. "I've known since college," he continued. "I overheard Dad's assistant back then, what was her name, Valerie, talking on the phone about their weekend plans while Dad was supposedly at a conference in Chicago." Elaine closed her eyes briefly. "There have been many Valeries over the years." "Why did you stay?" Austin asked. The question he'd wondered for decades finally spoken aloud. "For complicated reasons," Elaine answered. "Some good, some less so, but that's not what I needed to tell you." She reached for the water glass on her bedside table, and Austin quickly moved to help her. After a small sip, she continued, "There's something else, something about the company, something no one knows." The door opened again, and a nurse entered with medication. "Time for your pain management, Mrs. Winthrop." Elaine nodded, allowing the interruption. As the nurse checked her IV, Elaine's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Austin handed it to her, and she glanced at the screen. "It's Kira," she said, her tone neutral. "Your father's current executive assistant." Austin raised an eyebrow. "Another Valerie?" "Yes, but with a complication." Elaine handed the phone back without answering the text. "She's 5 months pregnant." Austin stood suddenly, pacing to the window. "Jesus, Dad, he's 70 for Christ's sake." Age has never deterred Garrison Winthrop from taking what he wants. Elaine watched her son process this information. I've invited her to the meeting with Richard this afternoon. Why would you do that? Austin turned, confusion evident. Because what I'm about to do affects her too. Elaine's expression softened. That child is your half-sibling, Austin. Whatever my feelings about your father or Kira, that baby is innocent. The nurse finished adjusting Elaine's medication and left quietly. Austin returned to his chair, his professional composure shaken. Mum, what are you planning? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Richard Holloway. Elaine answered, putting it on speaker. Richard, thank you for coming on such short notice. Of course, Elaine. I'm in the parking garage now. I should mention that Garrison called me this morning, sounding concerned. I imagine he did. Elaine's voice remained steady. When you arrive, please come directly to my room. Austin is here with me. After ending the call, Elaine turned to her son. I don't have much time left to explain before they arrive. 35 years ago, I discovered something in the company finances. Your father was skimming from investors, millions over time. Austin's face drained of color. That's impossible. The company has been audited countless times. Yes, because I made sure the books were clean. Elaine's eyes took on a distant look. I used my inheritance to replace the missing funds gradually. I covered for him, falsified documents when necessary. I protected him, protected our family name, protected you from having a father in prison. Austin was speechless, struggling to reconcile this revelation with the company he'd devoted his career to. But the most important part, Elaine continued, is that to ensure the funds were replaced properly, I had Garrison sign over controlling interest in the company to me. He never read the documents carefully. He trusted me to handle the boring details, as he called them. The majority of Winthrop Realty's shares are in my name, not his. Does Dad know this? He's about to find out. Elaine reached for her son's hand. Austin, I'm transferring half of those shares to you as planned, but the other half... A light knock at the door interrupted them. Richard Holloway entered. His tall frame stooped slightly as if bearing the weight of his 51 years in legal practice. Behind him, awkwardly lingering in the doorway, stood Kira Davidson. At 34, Kira was striking, auburn hair framing delicate features, her pregnant belly visible beneath a modest dress. She looked uncertain, glancing anxiously down the hallway, as if expecting Garrison to appear at any moment. Please come in, both of you, Elaine said. Close the door. Richard approached the bed, briefcase in hand. Elaine, you're looking well. No need for platitudes, old friend. Elaine smiled weakly. We all know why we're here. Kira remained near the door, her hand protectively over her stomach. Mrs. Winthrop, I'm not sure why you wanted me here. Please sit down. Elaine gestured to a chair. What I'm about to discuss affects you and your child as well. The tension in the room was palpable as Richard unpacked his briefcase, removing several documents. Austin stood by the window, arms crossed, watching Kira with an unreadable expression. Before we begin officially, Elaine said, I want everyone to understand something. What I'm doing isn't about revenge, though God knows I'd be entitled to some after 42 years of infidelity. She looked directly at Kira, who flinched slightly. It's about justice, about truth, about setting things right before I'm gone. The door burst open, and Garrison strode in, his carefully maintained composure slipping. Whatever you're planning, Elaine, this isn't the time or place. On the contrary, she replied calmly, this is exactly the time because soon I won't have any time left, and it's precisely the place, neutral ground where you can't silence me. Richard cleared his throat. Garrison, please take a seat. As Elaine's attorney, I've prepared the documents she requested. What documents? Garrison demanded, remaining standing. An amendment to my will and a transfer of assets, Elaine explained. Richard, would you please confirm for everyone what we discussed on the phone? Richard adjusted his glasses. I've verified the ownership structure of Winthrop Realty. Elaine controls 65% of the voting shares. The color drained from Garrison's face. That's impossible. I founded that company. I built it from nothing. You signed the transfer documents in 1989, Richard continued professionally. They're legally binding and have been in effect for 35 years. Why? Garrison whispered, finally taking a seat. Why would you do this, Elaine? Because you left me no choice. Her voice was steady but tinged with decades of suppressed pain. When I discovered you were embezzling from the company, I had two options: turn you in or save you. I chose to save you, but I wasn't foolish enough to leave you in control. Kira gasped softly, her eyes widening as she looked at Garrison with new uncertainty. That's a lie, Garrison hissed. She's confused from the medication. The financial records tell a different story, Richard interjected. Elaine provided me with extensive documentation. It's all quite clear. Austin stepped forward. Is it true, Dad? Did you steal from our investors? Garrison looked trapped, his charismatic facade crumbling. It was complicated. The real estate market in the 80s was volatile. I made some temporary allocations to cover losses. You stole, Elaine corrected, and I covered it up, which makes me complicit. Another sin I'll have to account for soon enough. She turned to Richard. The amendments, please. Richard handed her a document. This transfers 32% of Winthrop Realty shares to Austin, effective immediately. Elaine signed it with a trembling hand, then looked at Kira. The remaining 33% will be placed in a trust for your child, with conditions. Kira looked stunned. Mrs. Winthrop, I don't understand. It's simple, Elaine continued. That child is a Winthrop, regardless of the circumstances of conception. They deserve their birthright. Her gaze hardened as she turned to Garrison. But you, Garrison, will resign from the company effective immediately. You'll retain your personal assets, but have no role in Winthrop Realty's operations or decisions. The room fell silent as the magnitude of Elaine's decision sank in. Garrison stood frozen, his world collapsing around him. You can't do this, he finally said, voice barely above a whisper. She can, Richard confirmed. Legally, she has every right. Garrison turned to Austin, desperation in his eyes. Son, you can't let this happen. We can fight this. Austin shook his head slowly. If what Mom says is true about the embezzlement, we're lucky she's not turning everything over to the authorities. The monitors tracking Elaine's vital signs began beeping more rapidly. Everyone turned toward her as she suddenly gasped for breath, her face contorting in pain. Dr. Patel rushed in, followed by 2 nurses. Everyone out, he ordered sharply. She's having a cardiac event. As they were ushered from the room, Garrison caught a final glimpse of his wife, the woman he had betrayed repeatedly for decades, the woman who had saved him from himself and was now, with her final act, reclaiming the power he had never truly appreciated. In the hallway, chaos erupted as medical staff rushed past. Austin pressed against the wall, his world fundamentally altered in the span of an hour. Richard clutched his briefcase, the signed documents safely inside. Garrison stood motionless, the empire he thought he controlled slipping through his fingers, and Kira, hand still protectively over her belly, suddenly doubled over with a cry of pain. The baby, she gasped, a pool of water forming at her feet. Something's wrong with the baby. Someone help her, Austin shouted, rushing to Kira's side as she clutched her stomach in pain. The hospital corridor erupted into activity as a nurse who had been stationed nearby immediately called for assistance. Within moments, an obstetrics team arrived with a wheelchair. I'm only 23 weeks, Kira gasped between waves of pain. It's too early. The lead doctor, a woman with a calm demeanor and quick hands, helped Kira into the wheelchair. I'm Dr. Melissa Chen, head of high-risk obstetrics. We're going to take good care of you and your baby. As they wheeled Kira away, Austin turned to his father, who remained frozen in place, his eyes darting between the doors to Elaine's room and the retreating form of his pregnant assistant. Go with her, Austin commanded. That's your child. Garrison blinked, looking suddenly much older than his 70 years. I can't leave your mother. You've been leaving her for decades, Austin cut in, his voice low and controlled. At least this time it would be for a decent reason. Richard stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on Austin's shoulder. I'll stay here for any updates on Elaine. You both should go. I'll stay with Mom, Austin said firmly. Dad, go. Now. Something in Austin's tone, perhaps its uncharacteristic authority, seemed to break through Garrison's paralysis. With a brief nod, he hurried after the medical team. Austin leaned against the wall, exhaling deeply. Richard watched him with concern. When did you know? Austin asked, not looking at the attorney. About the shares? The embezzlement? Richard adjusted his glasses. I only confirmed it yesterday when your mother called me. I've been the family's attorney for 20 years, but these arrangements predated my involvement. She never told anyone, Austin mused, more to himself than to Richard. All these years, she held the power to destroy him, and instead she just watched him self-destruct. The doors to Elaine's room opened, and Dr. Patel emerged, his expression grave. "We've stabilized her for now, but she's very weak. She's asking for you, Mr. Winthrop." Austin nodded and entered the room. The sight of his mother, now connected to even more machines, an oxygen mask covering her face, sent a surge of anger through him. Anger at his father, at himself for staying away so long, at the unfairness of it all. "Austin?" Elaine whispered as he approached, her voice barely audible through the mask. "The documents?" "Signed," he assured her, taking her fragile hand. "Everything's in order." She nodded slightly, then asked, "Kira?" "In labor. Dad's with her." A ghost of a smile appeared behind the mask. "Good." Austin pulled his chair closer. "Mom, I need to understand. All these years, why didn't you leave him? Why protect him after what he did?" Elaine's eyes closed briefly, gathering strength. When she opened them, they held surprising clarity. "At first it was for you. Then inertia. Pride. I couldn't admit I'd failed." She paused, each word clearly costing her effort. "But mostly, I loved him, the man I thought he could be." Before Austin could respond, a tall woman in an FBI windbreaker appeared in the doorway, followed by a younger man in a suit. "Mrs. Winthrop," the woman said, showing her badge. "I'm Special Agent Diana Mercer. This is Agent Colby. We need to speak with you." Austin stood protectively. "My mother is dying. Whatever this is, it can wait." "I'm afraid it can't," Agent Mercer replied, her tone professional but not unkind. "We've been investigating Winthrop Realty for financial irregularities, specifically some recent transactions authorized by your father." Elaine's monitors began beeping more rapidly. She removed her oxygen mask with a trembling hand. "Not my son's doing," she managed. Austin wasn't involved. Agent Mercer approached the bed. "Mrs. Winthrop, we have reason to believe your husband has been funneling company assets through offshore accounts for the past 18 months. Approximately $12 million is unaccounted for." Austin felt the room tilt slightly. "That's impossible. The board would have..." "The transactions were disguised as property acquisitions in the Caribbean," Agent Colby explained. "But the properties don't exist." Elaine's expression hardened, a glimpse of the formidable woman she had once been breaking through her physical frailty. "He's doing it again," she whispered. "Again?" Agent Mercer asked sharply. Austin intervened. "My mother needs rest. I'm calling her doctor." "We need her statement," Agent Colby insisted. "And you'll get it," came a new voice from the doorway. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked black hair and an impeccable pantsuit stood there, emanating authority, but not without counsel present. "I'm Margaret Zhao, the Winthrop family's criminal attorney." Austin looked at her in confusion. "We don't have a criminal attorney." "Your mother retained me yesterday," Margaret replied, moving to Elaine's bedside. "Mrs. Winthrop, I advised you to wait for me before speaking with authorities." Elaine's eyes held a determined gleam. "No time for waiting." Margaret turned to the FBI agents. "My client requires medical attention. I'm sure you don't want to explain to a judge why you interrogated a dying woman against medical advice." Agent Mercer hesitated, then nodded. "We'll wait outside. But this is time sensitive." As the agents left, Austin turned to Margaret. "What is going on? Why would Mom hire a criminal attorney?" Margaret gave Elaine a questioning look, receiving a slight nod in return. "Your mother contacted me after identifying suspicious transactions in the company accounts. She's been monitoring the finances remotely during her illness." "You knew," Austin asked his mother, "about Dad's new scheme?" "Suspected," Elaine whispered, replacing her oxygen mask for a few deep breaths before continuing. 3 months ago. Couldn't prove it. Until yesterday." Margaret opened her briefcase, removing a flash drive. "Your mother compiled extensive documentation. The transactions began shortly after her cancer diagnosis became terminal. The implication hung heavy in the air. Garrison had started embezzling again as soon as he knew Elaine wouldn't be around to stop him. The timing of today's meeting wasn't coincidental, Margaret explained. Your mother wanted the shares transferred before the FBI investigation became public, to protect the company's reputation and your position within it. Austin ran a hand through his hair, struggling to process everything. Why hire a criminal attorney for herself? Mum didn't do anything wrong. Margaret and Elaine exchanged a look. The previous financial improprieties, Margaret said carefully, your mother's actions to cover them up constituted several federal crimes. including wire fraud and falsifying financial documents. The statute of limitations hasn't expired on all of them. You were protecting yourself, Austin realized, looking at his mother with new understanding. Elaine shook her head weakly. Protecting you. And the baby. A nurse entered, checking Elaine's monitors with a concerned expression. Her blood pressure is dropping. I need to ask everyone to step out while we stabilize her. In the hallway, Austin found himself between the criminal attorney his mother had secretly hired and the FBI agents waiting to take her statement. The surreal quality of the day intensified when he spotted a familiar face approaching from the elevator bank. Austin? The woman quickened her pace, concern evident in her expression. What happened? The hospital called about Mom. Valerie, Austin said, surprised to see his sister. Valerie Winthrop Chen lived in Hong Kong, running the Asian division of Winthrop Realty. At 42, she was the spitting image of a younger Elaine. Same determined jaw, same penetrating gaze. I was already on a flight to Atlanta, Valerie explained, embracing her brother. I had a bad feeling after talking to Mum yesterday. What's going on? And who are these people? Before Austin could attempt an explanation, Margaret stepped forward. I'm Margaret Zhao, your mother's attorney. These agents are investigating some financial irregularities at Winthrop Realty. Valerie's expression hardened. Dad, she said, not a question but a conclusion. Agent Mercer studied Valerie with interest. Ms. Winthrop, were you aware of any unusual financial activities within your family's company? We should continue this conversation somewhere more private, Margaret interjected. Perhaps the hospital conference room. As they began moving down the corridor, a doctor emerged from the direction of the maternity ward, stopping when he spotted Austin. Mr. Winthrop? I'm Dr. Rivera from obstetrics. Ms. Davidson is experiencing preterm labor. We're administering medication to stop the contractions, but I need to ask, does the father have any history of premature births in his family? Austin felt Valerie stiffen beside him. The father? She asked quietly. Our father, Austin confirmed, watching the news register on his sister's face. Jesus Christ, Valerie muttered. Some things never change. Dr. Rivera looked between them, realizing he'd stepped into a family drama. We need that medical history if available. It could be relevant to our treatment approach. I'll find out, Austin promised. Where is my father now? In the waiting area outside labor and delivery, 4th floor. As Dr. Rivera departed, Valerie turned to Austin, fury evident in her expression. Please tell me this isn't happening. Another woman at his age? His executive assistant, Austin confirmed. She's 23 weeks pregnant. And Mom knows? Mom knows everything, Austin said. Always has. Margaret cleared her throat. I need to speak with both of you about your mother's legal situation. It's quite urgent. Valerie held up her hand. First, I need to see Mom. Then I'm going to find our father and remind him what I learned in my Krav Maga classes. Your mother is being stabilized, Margaret explained patiently, and assaulting your father, however tempting, won't help your mother's situation. Agent Mercer stepped forward. We're willing to wait a reasonable amount of time for Mrs. Winthrop's statement, but I should inform you that we have agents at Winthrop Realty headquarters executing a search warrant as we speak. The hospital PA system suddenly crackled to life. Code Blue, Room 712. Code Blue, Room 712. Austin felt his blood turn to ice. That's Mom's room. The group watched as medical personnel raced toward Elaine's room. Austin moved to follow, but a nurse blocked his path. Please wait here, sir. The team needs space to work. Those next 20 minutes were the longest of Austin's life, standing in the corridor with his newly arrived sister, an FBI agent investigating their father, and a criminal attorney their mother had secretly hired. No one spoke. The only sounds were the muted hospital announcements and the distant squeak of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum. Finally, Dr. Patel emerged, his face grave but composed. She stabilized again, but very weak. Her heart stopped for nearly a minute. Can we see her? Valerie asked, her voice small. Briefly, Dr. Patel nodded. She's conscious but sedated. In the room, the increased medical equipment and personnel created a cocoon of technology around Elaine's diminished form. Her eyes fluttered open as her children approached. Valerie, she whispered, a faint smile visible beneath the oxygen mask. You came. Of course I came, Valerie replied, taking her mother's hand gently. I'm here now. Elaine's gaze moved between her children, then to Margaret. who stood respectfully at the foot of the bed. With obvious effort, she removed her oxygen mask. "Listen carefully," she said, each word measured and deliberate. "There's a safe deposit box. First Atlanta Trust. Key in my desk at home." She paused, gathering strength. "Everything you need to understand, to protect yourselves." "Mum, save your strength," Austin urged. Elaine's grip on his hand tightened with surprising strength. "Promise me, before the FBI, before Garrison knows." "I promise," Austin said. "Together," Elaine insisted, looking at Valerie. "We'll go together," Valerie assured her. "Mom, what's in the box?" Elaine's eyes drifted toward the window, where twilight was descending over the Atlanta skyline. "The truth," she whispered. "All of it. 42 years of truth." The monitors began beeping erratically again. A nurse quickly replaced Elaine's oxygen mask as Dr. Patel returned to check her vitals. "You need to leave now," he said firmly. "She needs complete rest." In the hallway, Valerie pulled Austin aside. "What truth? What's been happening while I've been in Hong Kong?" Before Austin could attempt to explain the day's revelations, his phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. "Austin Winthrop," he answered. "Mr. Winthrop, this is security from Winthrop Realty headquarters," came a tense voice. "There's been an incident. The FBI is here with a warrant, and your father arrived about 20 minutes ago. He went straight to his office and locked himself in. We're hearing concerning noises, and he's not responding to our calls." Austin exchanged an alarmed look with Valerie. "What kind of noises?" The security guard hesitated. "Sir, it sounds like he's destroying documents, and a few minutes ago, we heard what might have been a gunshot." "We're on our way," Austin said, ending the call and turning to Valerie. "So that was security at Winthrop headquarters. Dad's there, potentially destroying evidence. They heard what might have been a gunshot." Agent Mercer, who had been keeping a respectful distance, moved closer. "I need to alert my team at the office immediately." As she stepped away to make the call, Margaret addressed the siblings. "This complicates matters significantly. If your father is destroying documents relevant to a federal investigation, he could face obstruction charges on top of everything else," Valerie finished, her legal background evident. "We need to get there now." Austin turned to Margaret. "Stay with our mother. If she wakes again, I'll protect her interests," Margaret assured him. As they rushed toward the elevator, Austin's phone rang again. Dr. Rivera's name flashed on the screen. "Mr. Winthrop, we've managed to halt Ms. Davidson's contractions for now, but she's asking for you. She seems quite distressed." Austin closed his eyes briefly, torn between crises. "Tell her I'll be there as soon as possible. Is the baby stable?" "For the moment, yes. But this situation remains high risk." Valerie watched her brother's face as he ended the call. "Go to her," she said. "I'll handle Dad." "No, we need to stick together. Mom was clear about that." The elevator doors opened, and they stepped inside. As they descended, Valerie gripped the handrail. "This is my fault," she said quietly. "I should have been here. I knew Mom was dying, but I kept making excuses." Austin shook his head. "Don't. I did the same thing. We both stayed away because it was easier than watching her fade. Or easier than confronting Dad about his behavior," Valerie added bitterly. "How long has he been sleeping with his assistant?" "I don't know the details, but she's 23 weeks pregnant, so..." While Mom was undergoing chemotherapy, Valerie concluded, her expression hardening. "Some things never change." The elevator reached the ground floor, and they hurried through the lobby. Outside, Atlanta's evening traffic was building, the city lights beginning to twinkle against the deepening blue sky. "My car's in the south garage," Austin said, leading the way. They drove in tense silence toward downtown, the gleaming Winthrop Realty building visible from miles away, 40 stories of glass and steel topped with the company's distinctive W logo illuminated against the night sky. "Did you know," Valerie finally asked, "about Dad's embezzlement? The old scheme Mom covered up?" Austin kept his eyes on the road. "I found out today, same as you, but I suspected something wasn't right for years. The numbers sometimes seemed too perfect. And this new scheme, $12 million. Mom somehow detected it while reviewing company finances from her hospital bed. She was always brilliant with numbers." Valerie stared out the window at the passing city. Why did she stay with him all these years? After everything he did, she told me she loved the man she thought he could be, Austin said softly. "She deserved better," Valerie replied, a catch in her voice. They pulled into the underground parking garage of Winthrop Realty, finding it swarming with FBI agents and police officers. Agent Colby approached as they exited the vehicle. "Your father has barricaded himself in his office on the executive floor," he informed them. "Building security has evacuated all other personnel. Our hostage negotiator is attempting contact." "Hostage negotiator," Austin repeated. "Is there someone else in there with him?" "We don't know for certain, but his executive assistant's purse and phone were found on her desk. According to security logs, she hasn't left the building." Valerie and Austin exchanged alarmed looks. "That's impossible," Austin said. "Kira Davidson is in the hospital. She went into premature labor hours ago." Agent Colby frowned. "The personal items belong to Jennifer Morris. She's listed as your father's secondary executive assistant." "I've never heard of her," Valerie said. "She was hired 3 months ago," Agent Colby explained. "According to HR records, she handles your father's special projects." Austin felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. "Let us try to talk to him. He might respond to family." The FBI team escorted them to the executive floor, where a command center had been hastily established in the conference room. Tactical officers positioned themselves in the hallway, and a negotiator spoke softly into a phone. "Mr. Winthrop, your children are here," the negotiator was saying. "They'd like to speak with you." Silence followed, then a click as the call disconnected. "He's been doing that each time we mention family," the negotiator explained. "We've confirmed movement inside through thermal imaging, but he's not responding verbally." Austin studied the floor plan displayed on a tablet. "There's a private entrance to his office through his personal restroom. Dad had it installed during the last renovation." Agent Mercer, who had arrived separately, joined them. "Is it on the building plans?" "No," Valerie answered. "It was off book. Dad called it his escape hatch for when investors or board members trapped him in meetings." The FBI team quickly reorganized their approach. While they prepared to secure the hidden entrance, Austin's phone rang again. It was Richard Holloway. "Austin, I'm at the bank. Your mother regained consciousness briefly and was quite insistent that I retrieve the contents of her safe deposit box immediately. She gave me authorization. I'm looking at the contents now and you need to see this." "What is it?" "Evidence," Richard said, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. "Decades of it. Photos, financial records, letters. Your mother documented everything." "Everything about what?" Richard lowered his voice. "There are multiple flash drives with detailed financial records showing your father's embezzlement schemes dating back to the 1980s. But there's more. Evidence of other activities. Properties in the Cayman Islands not listed on company books. Communications with offshore accounts and photos." He hesitated. "Photos of your father with various women over the years, including current timestamps, with someone named Jennifer Morris." Austin closed his eyes briefly. "The secondary executive assistant." "There's something else," Richard continued. "Legal documents establishing a foundation called the EW Trust. According to these papers, your mother has been transferring significant personal assets into this trust for years." "For what purpose?" "Restitution," Richard replied. "The beneficiaries appear to be individuals or entities who might have been harmed by your father's financial maneuvers. It's quite elaborate, designed to activate upon her death while insulating you and Valerie from any fallout." Austin struggled to process this information. All these years, his mother had been quietly building a safety net, not just for her children, but for everyone his father might have harmed. "Austin, these documents suggest your mother has been playing a very long game," Richard said carefully. "She knew this day would come eventually." A commotion near the office door interrupted the call. The tactical team had breached the hidden entrance and was securing the area. "I have to go," Austin said. "Bring everything to the Winthrop building downtown." Inside Garrison's expansive corner office, the scene was chaotic. Papers were strewn everywhere, shredder bins overflowing. The distinctive glass desk, an extravagant piece Garrison had specially commissioned, was shattered, as was one of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlanta skyline. Garrison himself sat in his executive chair, facing away toward the broken window. When Austin approached, he noticed a small handgun resting on the armrest under his father's limp hand. "Dad?" Austin said cautiously. Garrison slowly rotated the chair. His normally impeccable appearance was disheveled, tie loosened, hair unkempt. A tumbler of whiskey sat on the desk beside him. "Son," he acknowledged, his voice hollow. "Is your mother—" "Still fighting," Austin replied. "Where's Jennifer Morris?" Something flickered across Garrison's face. Surprise, perhaps guilt. Gone. I sent her home when the FBI arrived. The logs show she never left the building, Valerie said, stepping forward. Where is she, Dad? Garrison's gaze shifted to his daughter, seemingly registering her presence for the first time. Valerie, flying in from Hong Kong for the occasion? Your timing is impeccable. The gun, Dad, Austin pressed. Security heard what sounded like a shot. Garrison glanced at the weapon, as if seeing it for the first time. I wasn't trying to shoot anyone, just needed to feel in control of something. He gestured vaguely toward a small bullet hole in the ceiling. FBI agents began methodically collecting documents, while the siblings kept their father distracted. Agent Mercer approached with a piece of paper. Garrison Winthrop, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. As she read him his rights, Garrison maintained an eerie calm, his eyes fixed on the family photos lining his credenza. Most featured him with business associates or celebrities. Only one showed Elaine, taken at their 40th anniversary gala 2 years earlier. She knew, he said suddenly, interrupting Agent Mercer. All these years, Elaine knew everything and said nothing. Why come forward now? Because she's dying, Valerie said sharply, and she wanted to die with a clear conscience. Or because she wanted me to suffer, Garrison countered. The ultimate revenge. Austin shook his head. No, Dad. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice, for all the people you've hurt, including your own family. As agents prepared to escort Garrison out, an FBI technician emerged from the executive bathroom, her expression concerned. Agent Mercer, you need to see this. The bathroom, designed as a luxury suite with shower and changing area, had been transformed into what appeared to be a makeshift bedroom. A suitcase lay open on a small cot, and the shower stall contained women's toiletries. Someone's been living here, the technician said, pointing to the toiletries and a small stack of women's clothing. Agent Mercer turned to Garrison. Mr. Winthrop, where is Jennifer Morris? Before he could answer, a soft sound came from behind a false panel in the closet area. Agent Mercer drew her weapon, signaling other agents to position themselves. FBI, come out with your hands up. The panel slid open slowly, revealing a terrified young woman with blonde hair and tear-streaked makeup. She couldn't have been more than 25. Jennifer Morris? Agent Mercer asked, lowering her weapon. The woman nodded, trembling visibly. Please don't hurt me. I did what he told me to do. Austin and Valerie watched in stunned silence as Jennifer emerged fully from the hidden compartment. Like Kira, she too was visibly pregnant. Garrison's expression remained impassive as Jennifer was led to a chair. Agent Mercer knelt beside her. Ms. Morris, are you being held here against your will? Jennifer glanced nervously at Garrison before answering. Not exactly. Mr. Winthrop said it would be safer if I stayed here for a while, because of the baby. Austin felt physically ill. Dad, what the hell have you done? Built a legacy, Garrison replied without emotion. Something that will outlast me when everything else is gone. As Jennifer answered the FBI's questions, a disturbing picture emerged. Hired specifically to handle Garrison's personal matters, she had been staying at the office several nights a week, ostensibly working on confidential projects. In reality, she had been helping Garrison move company assets into offshore accounts that would eventually benefit her and her unborn child. He said it was for our future, she explained tearfully, that he was just securing what was rightfully his before his wife's family tried to take it all. Agent Mercer showed her several documents. Did you assist in creating these transfer authorizations? Jennifer nodded. Mr. Winthrop said they were standard estate planning measures. I didn't know they were illegal. While the FBI continued their questioning, Austin stepped out into the hallway, needing a moment to process. Valerie followed him. 2 pregnant assistants, she said, her voice tight with anger. While Mom was dying, Austin leaned against the wall. This goes beyond his usual affairs. This was calculated. He was creating his own insurance policies, Valerie realized. Children who would be loyal to him, who would fight for his interests after he's gone. Austin's phone buzzed with a text from Richard. At Winthrop Building with materials from safe deposit box. Something you need to see immediately. They met Richard in a small conference room away from the FBI's command center. He had arranged the contents of Elaine's safe deposit box on the table. Decades of meticulously organized evidence. Your mother was extraordinarily thorough, Richard said, handing Austin a leather-bound journal. This appears to be her personal record. Austin opened it, recognizing his mother's elegant handwriting. The first entry was dated 2 years after his parents' marriage. April 15th, 1982. Today I found lipstick on G's collar. When confronted, he denied everything. I know he's lying. Choose to say nothing more for now. The company is at a critical juncture. The entries continued chronologically, documenting Garrison's infidelities and financial misdeeds with clinical precision. Some entries were brief notes. Others detailed accounts with supporting evidence cross-referenced in labeled folders. Look at this one, Valerie said, pointing to an entry from 1996. November 12th, 1996. G has impregnated his secretary, Caroline Winters. He doesn't know I'm aware. Have arranged for her to receive a job offer in California through a subsidiary contact. She accepted without telling G, which confirms my suspicion that she wanted escape, not entrapment. Arranged anonymous trust for medical expenses and child support. There are more, Richard said quietly, turning pages. At least 7 pregnancies over the years. Your mother tracked them all, provided for them discreetly. Austin and Valerie exchanged shocked looks. We have siblings we never knew about, Valerie whispered. Elaine kept this secret her entire life, Richard continued. Protected all of you. Her children, Garrison's other children, the company, the family name. He handed Austin a sealed envelope with, "For Austin and Valerie to be opened only after my death," written in Elaine's handwriting. Before Austin could decide whether to open it, his phone rang. It was the hospital. "Mr. Winthrop, this is Dr. Patel. You need to return immediately. Your mother's condition has deteriorated rapidly. I don't believe she has much time left." Austin and Valerie rushed back to the hospital, leaving Richard to secure Elaine's documents. When they arrived at her room, they found her conscious but clearly failing. Her breathing labored despite the oxygen. "You went together," she whispered as they approached, her voice barely audible. "Good. We found everything, Mum," Austin said, taking her hand. "The safe deposit box, the journal, everything. Need to know, did you understand?" "Yes," Valerie assured her, tears streaming down her face. "We understand now. Why you stayed. What you were protecting." Elaine's gaze drifted to the window, then back to her children. "Garrison? The FBI has him in custody," Austin replied, "along with Jennifer Morris." Elaine nodded slightly, unsurprised. "The other woman. How did you know about her?" Valerie asked. "Always knew," Elaine whispered. "Pattern recognition after 42 years. Dr. Patel entered quietly, checking the monitors. "Her vitals are declining," he said gently. "This may be the time for final words." Elaine gestured weakly for Austin to come closer. When he leaned in, she summoned her remaining strength to speak clearly. "The letter explains everything, but you should know." She paused, struggling for breath. "Kira's baby isn't Garrison's." Austin pulled back slightly, confused. "What?" "But she said, DNA test," Elaine continued. "Had Margaret investigate. The baby is yours, Austin." Austin staggered backward, the floor seeming to tilt beneath him. "That's impossible," he whispered. Elaine's eyes remained fixed on his, unwavering despite her failing strength. Seattle conference, February. When she came to finalize acquisition paperwork, the memory crashed into Austin's consciousness. A late night reviewing contracts, too much wine at the hotel bar, Kira's laughter as they talked about anything except his father or the company. He'd dismissed it as a momentary lapse, a mistake they'd both agreed to forget. "She never told me," Austin said, his voice hollow. "She couldn't," Elaine replied, each word clearly costing her precious energy. "Garrison believes it's his, uses it for control." Valerie placed a steadying hand on Austin's shoulder as he processed this revelation. "Mom, are you certain?" Elaine nodded faintly. "Margaret has proof. DNA confirmed." "How did you get my DNA?" Austin asked, bewildered. A ghost of Elaine's former shrewd smile appeared. "Mother knows everything." Her expression grew serious again. "Austin, you must decide. Claim your child, or let Garrison's legacy continue." Dr. Patel stepped forward. "She needs to rest now." "No," Elaine protested weakly. "Time for rest. Soon enough." She turned to Valerie. "The others, find them." "The other children?" Valerie confirmed. "From the journal?" Elaine nodded. "Part of trust. Already arranged. Margaret knows." Austin's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Rivera. Mr. Winthrop, Ms. Davidson is asking for you urgently. Her condition has stabilized, but she's extremely distressed. Austin showed the message to Valerie, conflict evident on his face. Go, Valerie urged. I'll stay with Mom. But it's your child, Austin, Valerie said firmly. Mom arranged everything for us to know the truth before it's too late. Don't waste this chance. Austin bent to kiss his mother's forehead. I'll be back soon. Make it right, Elaine whispered, her eyes already drifting closed with exhaustion. The journey to the maternity ward felt surreal. Austin's mind raced with implications, recalculations of everything he thought he knew. The timeline fit. 9 months ago, the Seattle conference. Kira had traveled there to finalize an acquisition Austin had been overseeing. They'd spent 3 days working closely together, culminating in that one night neither had mentioned since. Outside Kira's room, Austin paused, suddenly uncertain. For years he'd maintained professional distance from his father's personal indiscretions. Now he found himself implicated in ways he'd never imagined. Kira looked up when he entered, her face pale but composed. The monitoring equipment beeped steadily, indicating both her and the baby were stable for now. Your father was here, she said without preamble. He told me about the FBI, about what's happening at the office. Austin approached her bedside cautiously. Kira, we need to talk about the baby. Her hand moved protectively to her stomach. What about the baby? Is it mine? Austin asked directly, watching her face. Kira held his gaze for a long moment before answering. How did you find out? The confirmation hit Austin like a physical blow. My mother told me. She had a DNA test done somehow. Of course she did, Kira said, a bitter laugh escaping her. Elaine Winthrop controls everything, even from her deathbed. Why didn't you tell me? Austin asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. Kira looked away. I was going to, after that night in Seattle. But when I returned to Atlanta, she paused. Your father made it clear what would happen if I caused any problems. He offered me security, a future, said the timing worked perfectly since he and I had been involved around the same time. The implications of her statement hung in the air between them. You and my father, Austin said flatly. Before Seattle. Kira nodded, shame evident in her expression. It wasn't serious. It never is with him. Just another conquest in a long line. And then you slept with me. It wasn't like that, she insisted. That night with you was different, real. She met his eyes again. I never planned for any of this to happen. When I discovered I was pregnant, I did the math. The timing could have made it either of you, but I knew. I could feel it was yours. So you lied. Let my father believe it was his. I was scared, Kira admitted. Your father has power, influence. He promised to take care of everything if I played along. And you never reached out after Seattle. Never gave any indication you wanted more. Austin ran a hand through his hair, processing her words. I thought we both agreed it was a mistake. Is that what you thought it was? A mistake? Before Austin could answer, Dr. Rivera entered with a tablet displaying ultrasound images. The medications have successfully halted the contractions, he explained. However, we'll need to monitor Ms. Davidson closely for the remainder of her pregnancy. At 23 weeks, any delivery would be extremely premature. Austin stared at the ultrasound image, the tiny profile of a baby that was his child, his son or daughter. What are the risks going forward? He asked. Bed rest, limited stress, regular monitoring, Dr. Rivera replied. With proper care, we can likely extend the pregnancy to at least 32 weeks, which would significantly improve outcomes. After the doctor left, silence settled between Austin and Kira. What happens now? She finally asked. Austin moved to the window, watching evening descend over Atlanta. I don't know, he admitted. Everything's changing so fast. My mother is dying, my father's being arrested for embezzlement, and I just found out I'm going to be a father. For what it's worth, Kira said quietly. I'm sorry. Not for the baby. I could never be sorry about that, but for how everything happened. Austin turned back to her. Why did my mother arrange for a DNA test? She called me to her room last week, Kira explained. Somehow, she knew. She asked me directly, and I couldn't lie to her. Not when she looked at me with those eyes that see everything. She paused. She had her lawyer take a DNA sample, a strand of hair from my brush. I assumed she had something of yours for comparison. And you agreed to this? She gave me no choice, but she also gave me hope, Kira continued. She said she would ensure the baby was protected, no matter what happened with your father. Austin's phone rang, Valerie calling. His chest tightened with dread as he answered. "Austin, you need to come back," Valerie said, her voice strained. "The doctors say it's time. I'm on my way." As he moved to leave, Kira caught his hand. "Austin, whatever you decide, about us, about the baby, I want you to know it was real for me. That night in Seattle, it's always been real." Austin gently withdrew his hand. "I need time to think." When he reached his mother's room, he found it transformed. The harsh medical equipment remained, but someone had dimmed the lights and placed fresh flowers beside the bed. Valerie sat holding Elaine's hand, while Dr. Patel checked vital signs with a grim expression. "She's been asking for you," Valerie said, as Austin approached. Elaine's eyes fluttered open at the sound of his voice. "Austin," she whispered. "The baby?" "Stable, for now," he assured her. "Kira confirmed what you told me." Relief flickered across Elaine's features. "Good. Now listen. Both of you." She gestured weakly for them to come closer. "What I've done in protecting Garrison all these years was wrong. My greatest mistake." "You were protecting all of us," Valerie argued gently. "No." Elaine's voice strengthened momentarily with conviction. "I enabled him, allowed his behavior, Moni, to continue, hurt so many people." "The other children," Austin said. "In your journal, you tried to help them." "Not enough," Elaine whispered. "Should have stopped him. Long ago." She paused, gathering her remaining strength. "The letter explains my final amends." Dr. Patel stepped forward. "Her vitals are declining rapidly. If there's anything else that needs to be said." Elaine squeezed her children's hands with surprising strength. "Promise me, no more secrets, no more protecting the wrong people." "We promise, Mum," Valerie said, tears streaming down her face. "Love you both. So proud." Elaine's voice faded as her eyes drifted closed. The monitors continued their steady beeping for several more minutes before the rhythm changed, slowed, and finally flattened into a continuous tone. Dr. Patel quietly pronounced the time of death, 9:42 p.m. In the hospital corridor afterward, Austin and Valerie sat in stunned silence, the finality of their mother's passing washing over them in waves. Richard Holloway approached, carrying Elaine's letter. "I'm deeply sorry for your loss," he said, his professional demeanor softened by genuine grief. "Elaine was an extraordinary woman." "She was," Valerie agreed, wiping tears. "And we never truly knew her until today." Richard handed the sealed envelope to Austin. "She was explicit about you opening this together after her passing." Austin broke the seal and carefully unfolded the pages covered in Elaine's elegant handwriting. He began reading aloud. "My dearest Austin and Valerie, if you're reading this, I've finally found peace. Don't mourn me too deeply. I've lived a complex life of my own choosing, with all its contradictions and compromises. What you discovered today about your father is merely the surface. For 42 years I maintained the fiction of a successful marriage and family, while Garrison pursued his appetites unchecked. I told myself, I stayed for you, for the company, for our reputation. The truth is both simpler and more painful. I stayed because leaving meant admitting defeat. Pride is a quiet sin, but perhaps the most destructive. My pride kept me in a marriage long after love had been replaced by resentment. My pride led me to cover up Garrison's crimes rather than face public humiliation. And most unforgivably, my pride prevented me from acknowledging the human cost of my silence. The journal documents 7 children born of Garrison's affairs over the decades. I tracked them all, established anonymous trusts, watched from afar as they grew up without knowing their true heritage. Their names and current information are included in the files Margaret has. I've established the Elaine Winthrop Foundation with the majority of my personal assets. The foundation has 3 purposes. First, to provide restitution to anyone harmed by Garrison's financial misdeeds. Second, to establish connections among all of Garrison's children, including those you never knew existed, should they wish to know their siblings. Third, to ensure that the truth is finally acknowledged without destroying what we've built. Austin, I've known about your child with Kyra since the DNA results came back 3 weeks ago. This grandchild is my hope for redemption, a chance for our family to begin again with honesty as its foundation. Claim your child, but more importantly, claim your own life. Stop living in Garrison's shadow, Valerie. You've kept yourself at a safe distance, building your life across the world. I understand why. I did the same in my way. But distance becomes isolation, so gradually we don't notice until it's too late. Come home. Help your brother. Find the siblings you never knew. The Winthrop name can still stand for integrity, but only if you both have the courage I lacked. Break the cycle. Tell the truth, however painful. All my love now and always, Mom. Austin folded the letter carefully as he finished reading. She planned everything. Right down to the timing, Valerie agreed, making sure we learned the truth about Dad, about the other children, about Kira's baby, all of it just before she died. Giving us no chance to argue or try to change her mind, Austin added. Richard cleared his throat. There's something else you should know. The EW trust your mother established is set to issue a press release tomorrow morning, detailing Garrison's financial improprieties and announcing a restitution fund for affected investors. She's controlling the narrative even after death, Valerie said, a note of admiration in her voice. There's more, Richard continued. As of this morning, ownership of Winthrop Realty transferred to a new entity, the Winthrop Family Trust. The beneficiaries are all of Garrison's children, including the 7 documented in Elaine's records. Austin and Valerie exchanged shocked looks. All of them? Austin asked. Even the ones who don't know they're Winthrops? Richard nodded. Margaret has been working with private investigators for months, verifying identities, establishing contact protocols. Everything is in place. Just then, Austin's phone rang, Dr. Rivera again. Mr. Winthrop, I'm calling with concerning news. Ms. Davidson's blood pressure has spiked dangerously. We're moving her to intensive care. After ending the call, Austin turned to Valerie. I have to go. Kira's in trouble. Go, Valerie urged. I'll handle things here. In the ICU, Austin found Kira surrounded by medical staff, her face ashen against the hospital pillows. Preeclampsia, Dr. Rivera explained grimly. A dangerous complication of pregnancy. We're administering medication to lower her blood pressure, but if it doesn't stabilize soon? What about the baby? Austin asked. Our priority is Ms. Davidson's life right now. If her condition worsens, we may need to deliver immediately, despite the risks of extreme prematurity. Austin approached Kira's bedside, taking her hand. Her eyes fluttered open. I heard about your mother, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Don't worry about that now, Austin said. Just focus on staying stable. Kira's monitor began beeping rapidly as her blood pressure spiked again. Medical staff moved in quickly, administering medications and adjusting equipment. We need to decide, Dr. Rivera said urgently. If her blood pressure doesn't respond to treatment in the next hour, we'll need to perform an emergency C-section. The baby's too young, Austin protested. 23 weeks is at the very edge of viability, Dr. Rivera acknowledged. But waiting could cost Ms. Davidson her life. As the medical team worked, Austin stepped into the hallway overwhelmed. His mother was gone, his father was in FBI custody. The company he'd dedicated his life to was built on fraud. And now, the woman carrying his child, a woman whose relationship with him was complicated by deception and divided loyalties, might die. Valerie found him there, slumped against the wall. How is she? She asked. Critical, Austin replied. They may have to deliver the baby, even though it's too early. Valerie sat beside him. Margaret just called. The FBI wants statements from both of us, and Dad's lawyer is requesting a meeting. Let him rot, Austin said bitterly. I feel the same way, Valerie agreed. But there's something else. The FBI found documents in Dad's office, plans for a hostile takeover of Winthrop Realty through a shell company he controlled. He was going to push us both out, even before Mom got sick. Austin laughed hollowly. Why am I not surprised? This was no ordinary takeover plan, Valerie continued. The documents mention contingency heirs, Jennifer Morris's baby, and what he thought was his child with Kira. He was creating his own succession plan, bypassing us entirely. Before Austin could respond, Dr. Rivera emerged from Kira's room. The medication is working, he reported. Her blood pressure is stabilizing. We may be able to avoid an immediate delivery, but she'll need to remain hospitalized for the duration of her pregnancy. Relief washed over Austin. Can I see her? Briefly, she needs rest. Inside, Kira looked marginally better, some color returning to her cheeks. The doctor says you're stabilizing, Austin said, approaching cautiously. I heard them talking, Kira replied weakly, about how close it was. how the baby might not have survived. Austin took her hand. "Don't think about that now, you're both going to be okay." "I need to tell you something," Kira said, her voice strengthening with urgency. "Something I should have told you before. Whatever it is can wait until you're stronger." "No," she insisted. "I need to say this now while I have the courage." She took a deep breath. "Your father knows the baby isn't his." Austin stared at her. "What? But you said—" "I thought he believed it was his," Kira explained. "He certainly acted that way. But last week he came to my apartment furious, said he'd had his own DNA test done after hearing rumors about Seattle. He knew the truth and was planning to use it against you." "Use it how?" "As leverage," Kira said. "He said once he regained control of the company, he would give me a choice. Either publicly claim the baby was his, allowing him to control its future, or he would destroy your reputation and ensure you never had contact with your child." Austin felt a cold fury building inside him. "When was this?" "The day before your mother called me to her room. That's why I agreed to her test so readily. I was desperate for someone to help stand against your father." The pieces clicked into place in Austin's mind. Mom already knew. That's why she had the test done, not to confirm but to document, to give us proof. The heart rate monitor beeped as Kira's pulse quickened. "There's one more thing," she said. "Something I've never told anyone." Austin waited as she gathered herself. "The night in Seattle wasn't the first time for us," she said quietly. 3 years ago, at the company retreat in Aspen, we spent a weekend together. You had just broken up with Rachel, and I had just started working for your father. We agreed it was bad timing, that it would never work with the company dynamics." The memory rushed back. A weekend he'd deliberately buried, convinced it could never be more than a brief connection. "You took a job as my father's assistant after that," Austin said, the implication clear. "To be closer to the company." "Closer to you," Kira admitted. "But your father made his interest clear immediately. I rebuffed him at first, but then when you showed no signs of wanting to revisit what happened in Aspen, I eventually gave in. It was a mistake." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because we might not get another chance," Kira said, sudden tears welling in her eyes. "Because your mother just died trying to set things right, and I don't want to live with any more secrets or lies." Austin sat in stunned silence, processing everything. His father's betrayals seemed almost expected at this point, but his own blindness, his failure to see what had been in front of him for years, felt like a special kind of failure. "I need some air," he said finally, standing. "Austin," Kira called as he reached the door, "whatever happens between us, this baby deserves better than what your father planned. Better than secrets and manipulation." "I know," Austin replied, "and they'll have it, I promise." In the hospital corridor, Austin found Valerie waiting with Margaret Zhao. "How is she?" Valerie asked. "Stable for now," Austin replied. "But everything is more complicated than we thought." Margaret stepped forward. "I've been instructed to give you this," she said, handing him a flash drive. "Your mother recorded a video message 2 days ago. She was explicit that you should watch it together, tonight, regardless of circumstances." Austin stared at the small device in his palm. "A final message?" "She said it would explain everything," Margaret replied, "including the decision she made that set all of these events in motion." As they found a private room to view the recording, Austin couldn't shake the feeling that despite everything they'd learned today, his mother's most significant revelation was yet to come. The hospital administrative office was quiet at this late hour. Austin connected the flash drive to a computer while Valerie closed the door behind them. For a moment, they both hesitated, aware that whatever their mother had recorded would irrevocably change their understanding of the past and their path forward. "Ready?" Austin asked. Valerie nodded, her expression resolute. "As I'll ever be." The video opened with Elaine seated in her hospital bed, looking remarkably composed despite her illness. She wore a simple blue robe, her silver hair neatly arranged, a stark contrast to how they'd seen her just hours ago. The timestamp showed the recording was made just 2 days earlier. "Austin, Valerie," she began, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "If you're watching this, I've passed on, and the events I set in motion have begun to unfold. What I'm about to tell you is the full truth, something I've denied everyone, including myself, for far too long." She adjusted herself in the bed, a flash of pain crossing her features before she continued. 42 years is a long time to live a lie. My journals documented Garrison's indiscretions and financial misdeeds, but not my greatest shame. That I knew who your father truly was from the beginning and chose to stay anyway." Elaine paused, taking a sip of water before continuing. 3 months into our marriage, I discovered his first affair. 6 months in, I found evidence he was skimming from his initial investors. A year in, I was pregnant with you, Valerie, and trapped, or so I told myself. Her expression hardened with self-recrimination. The truth is more complex. I wasn't trapped, I was ambitious. Garrison had vision and charisma, qualities I lacked. Together we could build something extraordinary, so I made a devil's bargain. I would ignore his infidelities and quietly clean up his financial messes, in exchange for building the Winthrop empire alongside him. "Jesus," Valerie whispered. "For decades this arrangement served its purpose," Elaine continued. "The company grew beyond our wildest expectations. We became pillars of Atlanta society. You both received every advantage. But the cost," she shook her head, "the cost was my integrity, and worse, it was paid by others. The women Garrison discarded, the children he fathered and abandoned, the investors who trusted us." Elaine's eyes became unnervingly direct, as if she could see them through the screen. 3 days ago, I made a different choice. I contacted the FBI anonymously, pointing them toward Garrison's recent embezzlement scheme. I ensured Margaret had irrefutable documentation of all his past crimes. I arranged for DNA testing to confirm that Austin, not Garrison, is the father of Kira's baby. Austin and Valerie exchanged shocked glances. "I didn't do this for revenge," Elaine insisted. "I did it because I finally understood that my silence wasn't protecting our family. It was destroying it. Garrison was planning to isolate both of you from the company, using his new children as pawns in his power games. I couldn't allow that to be my legacy." She leaned closer to the camera, her intensity palpable. "But there's something more you need to know. Something I've never told another living soul." She took a deep breath. "Garrison isn't Austin's biological father." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Austin felt the floor drop beneath him, his entire sense of identity suddenly unmoored. "During a difficult period in our marriage," Elaine continued, her voice now soft with the weight of confession, "I had a brief relationship with James Holloway, Richard's older brother and our first attorney. When I discovered I was pregnant, Garrison and I had recently reconciled. He assumed the child was his, and I let him believe that." "Richard knows?" Austin managed to ask the screen as if his mother could hear. As if answering his question, Elaine continued, "Richard doesn't know. James died in a car accident before you were born, Austin. He never knew about you. I buried this secret so deeply that sometimes I could almost forget it myself." Tears now flowed freely down Elaine's face. "I'm telling you this not to cause pain, but because you deserve the truth, and because it explains why I've arranged things as I have." She wiped her eyes with a tissue before continuing with renewed determination. "The Winthrop family trust is structured so that all of Garrison's biological children will receive equal shares. Valerie and the 7 others documented in my files. Austin, you'll receive a separate inheritance directly from me, equal in value but separate from the Winthrop empire." Elaine's expression softened. "This isn't about disinheriting you, Austin. It's about freeing you. You've spent your life trying to earn Garrison's approval, never understanding why it always seemed just out of reach. Perhaps he sensed the truth on some level. Regardless, you now have a chance to define yourself apart from his shadow." Austin stood abruptly, pacing away from the screen. Valerie paused the video, giving him a moment to process. "Austin," she said gently, "are you okay?" He laughed bitterly. "My mother just told me from beyond the grave that my entire life has been based on a lie. No, I'm not okay. We should finish watching," Valerie suggested after a moment. "There might be more we need to know." Austin nodded, returning to his seat. Valerie resumed the video. "The final piece," Elaine continued, "concerns Kira and your child, Austin. I've established a separate trust for them, structured to provide security while ensuring Garrison can never gain influence over their future." Her expression grew urgent. "By now you've likely discovered Garrison's plans for his contingency heirs. What you may not know is that Jennifer Morris's pregnancy is high risk as well. Garrison has been keeping her virtually imprisoned in the office suite, away from proper medical care to ensure his control. She needs help just as Kira does." Elaine folded her hands in her lap, her message nearing its conclusion. "I've lived a life of compromise and rationalization, telling myself the ends justified the means. Don't make my mistakes. The Winthrop legacy isn't buildings or bank accounts. It's the choices you make when faced with difficult truths. Her eyes welled with tears again. I love you both so much. Forgive me for my failings. And Austin, her voice broke slightly, know that you were always loved, always wanted, always the best of me, regardless of your biology. The screen went black, leaving Austin and Valerie in stunned silence. Did you have any idea? Valerie finally asked. Austin shook his head, still processing. None. Did you? No, Valerie replied, though it explains some things. Dad always treated you differently, more critically, more distantly. Before they could discuss further, Austin's phone rang. It was Margaret. Austin, you need to get to the federal holding facility immediately, she said without preamble. Your father is demanding to see you and threatening to make serious allegations to the press if you don't come. What kind of allegations? He's saying he has evidence that Elaine deliberately falsified company records and committed tax fraud. He's claiming she set him up. Austin's jaw tightened. Let him talk. We have the truth on our side now. There's more, Margaret continued. Jennifer Morris was taken to Atlanta General Hospital with complications. She's asking for you specifically. Austin looked at Valerie, overwhelmed by the competing crises. I'll go see Dad, Valerie offered. You check on Jennifer and then get back to Kira. We need to stick together, Austin argued. Mom was clear about that. We will, Valerie assured him. But right now we need to divide and conquer. I'll record everything with Dad. No more family secrets. They parted ways in the hospital parking lot, each heading toward a different facet of the unfolding family drama. Austin arrived at Atlanta General to find Jennifer Morris in a private room, looking young and vulnerable in her hospital gown. Mr. Winthrop, she acknowledged warily as he entered. Thank you for coming. How are you feeling? Austin asked, maintaining a respectful distance. Better now, they said it was extreme dehydration and stress. She placed a protective hand on her belly. The baby's okay. Austin nodded, relieved despite the complicated circumstances. The FBI agent said you were staying at the office? Jennifer's expression clouded. Your father said it was safer, that people might try to use me or the baby to get to him. She paused. I realize now he was the one keeping me isolated, controlled. How long have you known my father? 8 months, she replied. He recruited me from the temporary agency where I was working, said he saw potential in me. A bitter smile crossed her face. I was so flattered. Garrison Winthrop taking a special interest in me. The familiar pattern was painfully clear. Jennifer, I want to help you and your baby, but I need to understand the full situation. What did my father tell you about his plans? She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. He said he was restructuring the company, that his current children had disappointed him, but he was creating a new legacy. She met Austin's eyes directly. He showed me documents, a trust for my baby that would eventually control significant company assets. Did he mention Kira Davidson? Jennifer nodded. He said there would be 2 primary heirs, my baby and hers, that we would need to work together eventually. Did he ever mention DNA testing? Confusion crossed her face. No. Why would he? Austin carefully considered his next words. Jennifer, there's something you should know. My father has a history of creating children with different women. You and Kira aren't the first. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for a glass of water. How many others? At least 7 that we know of, Austin replied gently. My mother kept track over the years. Jennifer absorbed this information, her expression hardening. I thought I was special. He made everyone feel that way. It was his greatest talent. She turned to look out the window. What happens now to me and the baby? My mother established a trust for all of Garrison's children, including yours. You'll have financial security regardless of what happens with the criminal charges against him. Jennifer's eyes widened in surprise. Your mother knew about me, and she still chose to help. She knew everything, Austin confirmed, and she spent her final days trying to make things right. A nurse entered to check Jennifer's vitals, giving Austin a moment to check his phone. There was a text from Valerie. Dad offering deal, claims he has evidence against Mom. Coming to the hospital now. Meet me in the conference room ASAP. After ensuring Jennifer was stable and had proper care, Austin made his way back to Brookhaven Memorial. The events of the past 24 hours had left him physically and emotionally exhausted, but a new clarity was emerging through the chaos. For the first time in his life, he was seeing the truth about his family without illusions or rationalizations. In the hospital conference room, He found Valerie waiting with Margaret, and surprisingly, Richard Holloway. The significance of Richard's presence wasn't lost on Austin, now knowing their actual connection. "What's happening with Dad?" Austin asked, closing the door behind him. "He's being transferred to the Federal Detention Center," Valerie replied. "But his attorney is requesting a meeting with all of us. They're bringing him here under FBI escort." "Why agree to meet him at all?" "Because he claims to have evidence that Mom committed crimes the FBI doesn't know about," Valerie explained. "He's threatening to release it to the press if we don't negotiate." Austin turned to Richard, studying the older man's face for any resemblance. "And you? Why are you here specifically?" Richard adjusted his glasses nervously. "Garrison asked for me personally, said it involves documents I notarized years ago." Before Austin could inquire further, the door opened. 2 FBI agents entered, followed by Garrison in handcuffs and his attorney, a sharp-featured woman in an expensive suit. "These restraints are unnecessary," the attorney was saying. "My client is cooperating fully." "Standard procedure during transport, Ms. Bennett," Agent Mercer replied firmly. Garrison's eyes locked with Austin's across the room. Despite his circumstances, he maintained his characteristic arrogance, his posture straight and proud even in the orange jumpsuit. "Son," he acknowledged, then glanced at Valerie. "Daughter, thank you for agreeing to meet. We're here to listen, not negotiate," Valerie stated coldly. Ms. Bennett placed a folder on the table. "My client has information concerning Elaine Winthrop's financial activities that may be relevant to the ongoing investigation. He's willing to withhold this information from the authorities in exchange for certain considerations." "Blackmail," Margaret observed. "Interesting strategy. Call it what you will," Garrison replied smoothly. "But before Elaine's carefully constructed narrative becomes gospel, you should know what she was really doing." He nodded to his attorney, who opened the folder and removed several documents. In 1989, Elaine Winthrop established a series of offshore accounts under the alias Eleanor Winston. Over the next 30 years, she funneled over $20 million into these accounts, money that was never reported to the IRS. Margaret remained unimpressed. "If you have evidence of tax evasion, why not share it with the FBI directly? Unless, of course, you're implicated as well." "I'm simply giving my children the opportunity to protect their mother's reputation," Garrison replied. "Once this information becomes public, the charitable foundation she established will be scrutinized. The trusts for her grandchildren might be affected. Is that what she would have wanted?" Austin felt a cold fury building inside him. "Don't pretend you care about what she wanted. You've spent decades betraying her in every way possible." "I gave her the life she desired," Garrison countered. "The success, the social position, the legacy. Yes, I had my indiscretions, but Elaine was no saint." He turned to Richard. "Tell them, Richard. Tell them about the documents you notarized in 1987. Richard paled visibly. "Those were confidential client matters." "They were falsified transfer agreements," Garrison pressed. "Elaine needed them to cover the paper trail when she was moving assets. You knew they weren't legitimate, but you notarized them anyway." Austin interceded before Richard could respond. "We know the truth, Dad. All of it." "Do you?" Garrison challenged. "Did she tell you why she was so interested in tracking my other children? Why she secretly provided for them?" "Because she had a conscience," Valerie replied. "Unlike you." Garrison laughed bitterly. "No, because she was afraid I'd discover her own infidelity." He turned to Austin, his eyes cold. "She never told you, did she, that you're not my biological son?" The room fell silent. Austin felt all eyes turn to him, waiting for his reaction to this bombshell. "Actually," he said calmly, "she did tell me tonight, in a video she recorded before she died." The confidence drained from Garrison's face, replaced by genuine shock. "She admitted it?" "Yes, along with everything else." Austin stepped closer to the table. "She told us about James Holloway, about your embezzlement schemes, about your plans to push Valerie and me out of the company using your contingency heirs. She documented everything, Dad. There's nothing you can threaten us with that we don't already know." Garrison's composure faltered momentarily before he regained control. "Then you know she was complicit in everything I did, every financial irregularity, every cover-up. Her hands are as dirty as mine." "The difference," Valerie interjected, "is that she tried to make amends. She spent her final days ensuring that everyone you harmed would be compensated, that all your children would be acknowledged and provided for." What are you doing with your final days of freedom, Dad? Threatening and blackmailing your own family? Ms. Bennett attempted to redirect the conversation. My client is offering to withhold potentially damaging information in exchange for your support during his trial. Family statements can significantly impact sentencing. No deal, Austin said firmly. We're done covering up the truth. All of it comes out. Mom's mistakes, Dad's crimes, everything. You'll regret this, Garrison warned. When the Winthrop name is dragged through the mud, when investors flee the company, when the social invitations stop coming, you'll wish you'd listened to me. Maybe, Austin acknowledged, but we'll be able to look ourselves in the mirror. That's something you wouldn't understand. As the FBI agents prepared to escort Garrison out, he made one final attempt. Austin, be reasonable. Despite what Elaine told you, I raised you as my son. That should count for something. Austin studied the man who had shaped so much of his life, his ambitions, his insecurities, his understanding of what it meant to be successful. For the first time, he saw Garrison clearly, not a titan of industry or a charismatic leader, but a deeply broken man unable to confront his own failings. It does count for something, Austin replied softly. It taught me exactly the kind of man I don't want to be. The door had barely closed behind Garrison when Austin's phone rang urgently. It was Dr. Rivera. Mr. Winthrop, you need to come to Ms. Davidson's room immediately. Her condition has deteriorated critically. We're preparing for an emergency C-section. Austin rushed to the maternity ward, finding the hall outside Kira's room buzzing with medical personnel. Dr. Rivera met him, his expression grave. Her blood pressure spiked again, triggering seizures consistent with eclampsia. We have no choice but to deliver now. Will they survive? Austin asked, fear gripping his chest. The next hour will be critical for both of them, Dr. Rivera replied honestly. At 23 weeks, the baby's chances are concerning, but our NICU team is standing by. Ms. Davidson's condition is our immediate priority. A nurse emerged from the room. We're ready, Doctor. Wait, Austin said. Can I see her? Just for a moment. Dr. Rivera hesitated, then nodded. Very briefly. Inside, Kyra lay pale and still, an oxygen mask covering her face. Monitors beeped urgently around her. She opened her eyes as Austin approached, recognition flickering through the haze of medications. I'm scared, she whispered. Austin took her hand gently. I'm right here. You're not alone. The baby is going to fight just as hard as you are, Austin assured her. We're going to get through this together. A tear slipped down her cheek. I'm sorry for all the lies. For everything. That doesn't matter now, Austin said firmly. What matters is you and our child. Dr. Rivera touched his shoulder. We need to move her now. As they wheeled Kyra toward the operating room, Austin felt a presence beside him. Valerie had arrived, supporting him silently as they watched the medical team disappear through the swinging doors. I just heard about Jennifer Morris, Valerie said quietly. Her condition has stabilized. Margaret is arranging for her to be transferred here, so both high-risk pregnancies can be monitored by the same team. Austin nodded, his focus still on the operating room doors. Did they take Dad back to detention? Yes. But his lawyer is already filing motions, claiming Mom coerced him into signing documents he didn't understand. She squeezed his arm. Don't worry about that now. Focus on Kira and the baby. How did we get here, Val? Austin asked, his voice hollow. How did our family become this tragedy? One compromise at a time, she replied softly. One secret, one rationalization, one looking the other way, until the foundation was so rotten, it couldn't stand anymore. The next 90 minutes were the longest of Austin's life. He and Valerie waited in tense silence, watching doctors and nurses rush in and out of the operating room. Finally, Dr. Rivera emerged, his surgical mask pulled down. Ms. Davidson is stable, he reported. We've stopped the seizures and her blood pressure is responding to medication. And the baby? Austin asked, hardly daring to breathe. Your son is alive, Dr. Rivera said. He weighs just over 1 pound and is being stabilized by the NICU team. I won't sugarcoat this. The next 48 hours are critical. Babies born at 23 weeks face significant challenges. A boy, Austin whispered. I have a son. Dr. Rivera's expression softened. Would you like to see him before they take him to the NICU? Austin nodded, unable to speak past the emotion constricting his throat. He followed Dr. Rivera back into the operating room, where a team of specialists surrounded a tiny, translucent-skinned infant connected to numerous tubes and monitors. The baby was impossibly small, frighteningly fragile, his chest rising and falling with the help of a ventilator. "You can touch his hand," a NICU nurse encouraged, "just very gently." Austin reached out with a trembling finger, lightly touching his son's miniature hand. To his astonishment, the tiny fingers reflexively curled around his. "He's fighting," the nurse said. "That's a good sign." As they prepared to transfer the baby to the NICU, Austin leaned close to the plastic enclosure. "Stay strong, little one," he whispered. "We have a lot of truth to tell you someday." Outside in the waiting area, Austin found not only Valerie but also Margaret, Richard, and surprisingly, Dr. Patel from his mother's care team. "Dr. Patel," Austin acknowledged, confused by his presence. "Did you need something?" The doctor stepped forward, holding a small envelope. "Before she passed, your mother asked me to give you this when your child was born. She was quite specific about the timing." Austin accepted the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a handwritten note in Elaine's elegant script. "Austin, if you're reading this, I've passed on, but your child has entered the world. Perhaps sooner than expected, given Kyra's condition, but here nonetheless. A grandchild I'll never meet, but have provided for nonetheless. A new beginning for our family. I named you Austin James Winthrop, acknowledging your true father in the middle name, while giving you the Winthrop legacy through the first and last. You've carried that name with more honor than Garrison ever did. Now you have the chance to define what your son's name will mean. Choose wisely, choose honestly. The Winthrop name can still stand for integrity, but only if you make it so. All my love, Mom." Austin folded the note carefully, tucking it into his pocket. In the midst of crisis and revelation, his mother had managed one final act of love, giving him permission to forge a new path, unburdened by the secrets and compromises of the past. "The NICU doctor wants to speak with you," Valerie said gently, "about the baby's treatment plan." As Austin turned to follow her, his phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made him stop in his tracks. "Breaking: FBI investigating Winthrop Realty for massive financial fraud. Founder Garrison Winthrop in custody." The story was out. There was no turning back now. "It's time," Austin said, his voice steady with newfound resolve. "Time for the whole truth to come out." 3 days after his son's premature birth, Austin stood in the hushed environment of the NICU, watching the tiny form in the incubator. A maze of tubes and wires connected the 1-pound infant to machines, monitoring his every breath, heartbeat, and oxygen level. Despite the medical team's cautious optimism, they had been clear about the reality. Each hour the baby survived was a victory. Each day, a small miracle. Austin placed his hand against the clear plastic of the incubator, the closest he could come to touching his son. "He's stabilizing," said Dr. Larson, the NICU specialist who had been overseeing the baby's care. "His oxygen requirements have decreased slightly over the past 12 hours, which is a positive sign." "When will we know if he'll be okay?" Austin asked, his voice rough from lack of sleep. "With micropremies, we measure progress day by day, sometimes hour by hour," Dr. Larson explained gently. "The first week is critical, but even if we get through it successfully, we're looking at months in the NICU. There will be setbacks along with the progress." Austin nodded, having heard similar cautions since the emergency delivery. Still, he found himself clinging to every positive indicator, however small. "Have you decided on a name?" Dr. Larson asked. "It helps the staff connect with the baby, and honestly, we believe it helps the babies too, hearing their names spoken." Austin studied his son's translucent skin, the fragile chest rising and falling with mechanical assistance. Since the birth, he'd been wrestling with this decision, aware of its significance given everything that had happened. "James," he said finally. "James Austin Winthrop," the doctor smiled. "A family name?" "Yes," Austin confirmed, thinking of the biological grandfather his son would never meet and the legacy his mother had tried to preserve. A true family name. After the doctor left, Austin remained by the incubator, keeping a vigil he had maintained as much as possible since the birth. The outside world was in chaos. News outlets running constant coverage of the Winthrop financial scandal, as it was now being called, the company's stock plummeting despite emergency board meetings, federal investigators combing through decades of records. But here in the NICU, none of that seemed to matter. The universe had narrowed to the rhythm of his son's monitored heartbeat. "There you are," came Valerie's voice from behind him. She approached cautiously, her eyes fixed on the tiny infant. "How is he?" "Holding his own," Austin replied. "The doctors say that's the best we can hope for right now." Valerie placed her hand on her brother's shoulder. "You need rest, Austin. You've barely slept in days." "I can't leave him. You won't be any good to him if you collapse," she countered gently. "Kira's been asking for you too." Austin rubbed his eyes, acknowledging the bone-deep fatigue. Kira had stabilized after the emergency C-section, but her recovery was complicated by the preeclampsia and the emotional trauma of delivering a critically premature baby. "How is she?" "Better physically," Valerie replied. "Emotionally." She let the sentence hang. "She needs to see you, Austin. You've barely spoken since the birth." The truth was, Austin had been avoiding a lengthy conversation with Kira, unsure what to say or how to navigate their complicated relationship amid the current crisis. The revelation that the baby was his, not his father's, had upended everything, leaving unresolved questions about their future. "I'll go now," he decided. "Will you stay with him? Talk to him so he's not alone?" Valerie nodded, taking Austin's place beside the incubator. "I've got some catching up to do with my nephew anyway. We haven't been properly introduced." As Austin headed toward Kira's room, his phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. "Judge denied Garrison's request for bail. Prosecution citing flight risk due to offshore assets. Trial date expedited. Need to discuss your testimony options." The reality of his father's criminal case was just one of many fires requiring his attention. The board of Winthrop Realty had called an emergency session for tomorrow. Investors were demanding answers, and reporters camped outside the hospital hoping for statements from any Winthrop family member. Outside Kira's room, Austin paused to collect himself. Through the partially open door, he could see her sitting up in bed, scrolling through news coverage on her tablet. She looked pale but alert, her auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. "Hey," he said softly, entering the room. Kira set aside the tablet immediately. "Austin, how's the baby?" "Stable," he replied, taking the chair beside her bed. "Dr. Larson says he's showing good signs for someone so small." "I haven't seen him since they took him," Kira said, a catch in her voice. "They keep saying I'm not strong enough yet to go to the NICU." "I've been taking pictures," Austin said, pulling out his phone to show her the latest images. "And they're setting up a secure video feed, so you can see him any time." Kira studied the photos, tears welling in her eyes. "He's so tiny, but fighting hard," Austin assured her, "just like his mother." A silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken questions about their shared past and uncertain future. "I named him," Austin said finally. "James Austin Winthrop. I hope that's okay." "James," Kira repeated, testing the name. "It's beautiful." She hesitated. "Your mother's letter, the one Dr. Patel gave you, did it say something about that name?" Austin nodded, surprised she knew about the letter. "How did you know?" "She told me she would leave guidance," Kira admitted. "The day she had me come to her room about the DNA test, she mentioned she was leaving letters for important moments she wouldn't be here for." Austin felt a renewed wave of grief for his mother, whose foresight had extended far beyond her death. "The letter explained that my middle name James was for my biological father, James Holloway, Richard's brother. That's why you chose it for our son," Kira realized. "To honor the truth." "Yes," Austin confirmed. "No more secrets, no more pretending." Kira reached for his hand tentatively. "Austin, we need to talk about us, about what happens when I'm discharged, when James eventually comes home, about what kind of parents we're going to be." Before Austin could respond, there was a knock at the door. Richard Holloway stood there, looking uncomfortable about interrupting. "I'm sorry," he said. "The nurse said I could find you here, Austin. There's something urgent we need to discuss." Austin squeezed Kira's hand. "We'll finish this conversation soon, I promise." In the hospital corridor, Richard's normally composed demeanor showed signs of strain. "The FBI has been questioning me about my knowledge of Garrison's activities," he explained, "and about other matters." Austin studied the older man's face, searching for traces of resemblance he might have missed all these years. "They asked about James Holloway, about my biological father." Richard nodded, clearly uncomfortable. "Agent Mercer had some very specific questions. It seems Elaine left documentation about everything." "Did you know," Austin asked directly, "that your brother was my father?" "No," Richard replied, his voice strained. "I suspected something once years ago when Elaine made unusual changes to her will after James died, but she never confirmed it. and I never asked. It wasn't my place. Austin absorbed this, wondering how different his life might have been if the truth had been acknowledged decades earlier. "I've brought something for you," Richard continued, opening his briefcase. "After your mother's revelation, I went through some old files James had left in storage. I found these." He handed Austin a small bundle tied with string, letters, photographs, and what appeared to be journal entries. "James wrote about Elaine," Richard explained. "Not by name, but it's clear who he meant. He was in love with her, deeply so. These were never sent." Austin held the bundle carefully, this tangible connection to a father he'd never known, both precious and painful. "Thank you," he said simply. "There's something else," Richard added. "The FBI has uncovered evidence that Garrison may have known about your paternity all along." Austin's head snapped up. "What? How?" "DNA testing became available in the late 1980s, Richard explained. "According to files recovered from Garrison's private safe, he had testing done secretly when you were about 5 years old. He knew you weren't biologically his, but he never confronted Elaine. Instead, he used it as justification, in his own mind at least, for his affairs and financial manipulations." The revelation struck Austin like a physical blow. All those years of trying to earn his father's approval, of wondering why Garrison always seemed to hold him at a distance, suddenly made sense in the most painful way. "He knew," Austin repeated, processing the implications. "All this time, he knew." "It doesn't change who you are," Richard said gently. "But I thought you should be prepared. The FBI believes Garrison may try to use this information in his defense, claiming Elaine's betrayal as motivation for his actions." Austin laughed bitterly. Of course he would, always looking for someone else to blame. Before they could discuss further, Austin's phone rang, the NICU calling. His heart raced as he answered, fearing the worst. "Mr. Winthrop, this is Nurse Chen from the NICU. Your son is having some breathing difficulties." "Doctor, Larson would like you to come right away." Austin rushed back to the NICU, finding increased activity around James's incubator. Dr. Larson was adjusting ventilator settings while nurses monitored the baby's oxygen levels. "What's happening?" Austin demanded, fear tightening his chest. "His right lung partially collapsed," Dr. Larson explained, her focus remaining on the monitors. "We're adjusting his ventilator support and administering surfactant to help re-expand it." "Is he going to be okay?" "We're doing everything we can," the doctor replied, her non-answer speaking volumes. "These complications are not unexpected in micropremies, but they are serious." Valerie stood nearby, visibly shaken. It happened so suddenly. He was stable 1 minute and then all the alarms started going off. The next hours passed in agonizing slowness as the medical team worked to stabilize James. Austin and Valerie maintained a vigil outside the NICU, joined occasionally by Richard, who seemed reluctant to leave despite having no official reason to stay. "He's my nephew," Richard said quietly when Austin questioned his continued presence. "My brother's grandson. Family." Margaret arrived late that evening, her professional demeanor softening when she saw Austin's exhausted state. "The judge has scheduled a hearing for tomorrow regarding the Winthrop assets," she reported. "The FBI wants to freeze everything pending investigation, but I've filed motions to protect the trusts Elaine established, particularly those for James and the other children." Austin nodded absently, his attention focused on the NICU doors. "Whatever you think is best." "Austin," Margaret said firmly, "I know your son is your priority right now, but there are decisions that need to be made about the company. The board is demanding leadership in this crisis." "Let them demand," Valerie interjected. "Family comes first right now." Margaret's expression softened. "I understand, but there's something else you should know. Jennifer Morris was discharged today. She's agreed to cooperate with the investigation in exchange for immunity." This caught Austin's attention. "What kind of cooperation?" "She claims Garrison confided in her about contingency plans if he ever faced legal trouble," Margaret explained, "including offshore accounts the FBI hasn't yet identified, and potentially incriminating evidence against former business associates he was prepared to leverage. He was planning to take others down with him," Valerie realized. "Precisely," Margaret confirmed. "And some of those individuals are current Winthrop Realty board members." The implications were clear. The company Austin and Valerie had dedicated their careers to was compromised at multiple levels. The corruption extended well beyond Garrison himself. Before they could discuss further, Dr. Larson emerged from the NICU. "We've stabilized him for now," she reported, fatigue evident in her voice. The lung has re-expanded and his oxygen levels are improving gradually. Relief flooded through Austin. "Can I see him?" "Briefly," Dr. Larson agreed. "But I want to be very clear. We're not out of the woods. The next 24 hours remain critical." Inside the NICU, James lay impossibly small in his incubator, the ventilator breathing for him, monitors tracking every function. Despite the crisis, he had survived. Austin placed his hand against the plastic, overwhelmed by the fierce love he felt for this tiny fighter, and by the knowledge of how close he'd come to losing him. "Your mum named you well," Austin whispered. "James for strength, Austin for perseverance, Winthrop for whatever we make it mean going forward." When Austin finally left the NICU, exhaustion overtaking his determination to remain, he found Kira waiting in the hallway. She was in a wheelchair, a nurse standing behind her. "I convinced them to bring me," she explained. "I needed to see him." Austin guided her wheelchair into the NICU, where a nurse helped position her beside the incubator. Kira reached out, touching the plastic barrier just as Austin had done. "Hello, James," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm your mom. I'm so sorry I couldn't keep you safe longer." "He knows your voice," Austin assured her. "He's been hearing it for months." They sat together in silence, two people connected by this fragile life and a complicated past, watching their son fight for each breath. "I want to make this work," Kira said finally. "Us co-parenting. I know I've made mistakes." "We both have," Austin interrupted gently. "And right now, none of that matters. What matters is James, and giving him the family neither of us really had." Kira nodded, wiping away tears. "Your mother told me something that last day I spoke with her. She said, 'The truth is painful but necessary. Secrets protect no one in the end.' I didn't fully understand what she meant then, but I do now." The next morning brought cautious good news. James had stabilized through the night, his tiny lungs responding to treatment. Dr. Larson upgraded his condition from critical to serious but stable, a significant improvement that allowed Austin to attend the emergency board meeting Margaret had been insisting on. The Winthrop Realty headquarters felt like a different world after the intimate intensity of the NICU. FBI agents still occupied portions of the building. Board members arrived with lawyers in tow, and employees watched nervously as Austin and Valerie entered the executive floor. "Remember," Margaret advised as they approached the boardroom, "you're in a position of strength despite appearances. Your mother's preparations were thorough. The trust structures are legally sound." Inside, the tension was palpable. The 12-member board, longtime associates of Garrison, most of them, sat rigidly around the massive table, expressions ranging from concern to outright hostility. Harold Winters, the lead independent director and Garrison's oldest friend, spoke first. "This is an unprecedented crisis. The company's stock has fallen 30% in 3 days. Clients are fleeing. Regulators are circling. We need immediate damage control." "Damage control?" Valerie repeated coldly. "Is that what you call addressing decades of fraud and financial manipulation?" "Your father's alleged personal misconduct," another director began. "Save it, Charles," Austin interrupted. "The FBI has the documentation. This wasn't alleged or personal. It was systematic fraud that many of you either actively participated in or willfully ignored." A stunned silence followed this direct accusation. "We're not here to point fingers," Harold attempted, regaining his composure. "Actually, we are," Margaret interjected, opening her briefcase. "I've brought copies of Elaine Winthrop's complete documentation, including evidence implicating several board members in Garrison's financial schemes." She distributed folders to each director. "You'll find your specific involvement highlighted in your individual copies. Before anyone considers damage control or company saving measures, you should understand your personal legal exposure." The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically as directors frantically reviewed the contents of their folders. "This is outrageous," Charles sputtered. "These are private communications taken out of context." "The FBI has the originals," Valerie informed him calmly. "Context included." Austin stood, commanding attention. "Here's what's going to happen. This board will be dissolved, effective immediately. An interim governance committee consisting of untainted executives will be appointed with oversight from independent auditors." "You can't do that," Harold protested. "Board members can only be removed by shareholder vote. As controlling shareholder through the Winthrop Family Trust, I can and will," Austin replied. The trust now holds 65% of voting shares, as you're well aware. A murmur ran through the room as the directors realized their position. The alternative, Valerie added, is that we turn everything over to the FBI today, including the evidence my mother compiled about your individual involvements, and let the chips fall where they may. The subsequent discussion was brief and one-sided. By noon, the existing board had submitted their resignations. An interim governance committee had been appointed from untainted division heads, and a press release announcing comprehensive reform measures was being drafted. As executives filed out, many avoiding eye contact with Austin and Valerie, Harold lingered behind. "Your father built this company from nothing," he said, a hint of accusation in his tone. "Whatever his flaws, his vision made all of this possible. Are you prepared to dismantle his legacy?" Austin regarded him steadily. "His vision was compromised from the beginning, Harold. What we're doing isn't dismantling his legacy. It's building something honest from the ruins." After the boardroom cleared, Austin and Valerie found themselves alone in the vast space that had intimidated them since childhood. The panoramic views of Atlanta, the oversized portraits of Garrison that dominated the wall, the sense of power and prestige the room had been designed to project, all of it seemed hollow now. "What's next?" Valerie asked quietly. "I need to get back to the hospital," Austin replied, to James, to Kira. "I meant with the company with all of this." She gestured broadly to encompass the Winthrop empire. Austin considered the question. "I think we need to decide if this is something worth saving. If the Winthrop name can mean something different going forward, or if it's too tainted to redeem." "And the others?" Valerie asked. "Mom's files identified 7 half-siblings we've never met." "We find them," Austin decided. "We offer them the truth and a choice about whether they want to be part of whatever comes next." When Austin returned to the hospital, he found Kira in the NICU, reading softly to James. The sight stopped him in the doorway. This intimate moment between mother and son, fragile but real. "The nurses said it helps," Kira explained, noticing him. "Hearing our voices regularly. I've been reading him The Velveteen Rabbit, about becoming real through being loved," Austin observed, recognizing the classic story. "Seemed appropriate," Kira said with a small smile. "How was the board meeting?" "Revolutionary," Austin replied. "The old guard is out. We're starting over." He joined her beside the incubator, where James lay with slightly improved coloring, his tiny chest rising and falling more naturally than before. "Dr. Larson says he's responding well to the treatments," Kira reported. "His lung function is improving hour by hour." Austin felt something unfamiliar, a cautious hope beginning to replace the fear that had dominated since the premature birth. "I've been thinking about what happens next," he said. "For us, for James. I know we have a complicated history, but I want to try to build something genuine, not because of obligation or circumstance, but because I think there's something real between us, something that got buried under all the complications." Kira studied him carefully. "Are you sure? There's no need to rush into decisions. We can co-parent effectively without forcing a relationship." "I'm not talking about forcing anything," Austin clarified. "I'm talking about giving ourselves permission to explore what might have been there all along, without my father's shadow hanging over us." Before Kira could respond, a nurse approached with a tablet. "Ms. Davidson, we have the results from baby James's latest tests. Dr. Larson asked me to share them with you right away." They reviewed the results together, hope building as they saw improvement across multiple indicators. While still critically premature, James was showing the resilience they had been praying for. "He's so much like you," Kira said softly, "fighting against the odds." "And like you," Austin added, "stronger than anyone gives him credit for." As evening fell, Austin found himself in the hospital chapel, seeking a moment of quiet reflection amid the chaos of recent days. To his surprise, he found Richard already there, sitting silently in the back row. "I hope I'm not intruding," Austin said, hesitating at the door. Richard gestured to the seat beside him. "Not at all. I was just thinking." They sat together in companionable silence for a while, the chapel's hushed atmosphere providing a brief respite from the medical urgency of the NICU and the legal complexities awaiting outside. "I've been reading James's letters," Austin finally said. "My biological father's letters. He seemed like a good man." "He was," Richard confirmed. "Principled, compassionate, much like you actually." Austin considered this. Did my mother love him? Richard hesitated. I believe she did, yes. Their relationship was brief but intense. When James died, something in Elaine changed. She became more pragmatic, more focused on building security. And you, all these years, working for our family, never mentioning him? James was gone, Richard said simply. Elaine made her choice to stay with Garrison. It wasn't my place to disrupt that, especially without knowing for certain about your paternity. The chapel door opened quietly, and Valerie entered, pausing when she saw them together. Sorry to interrupt, she said. Margaret just called. The judge has ruled on the asset freeze. The trusts for James and the other children are protected, but the main company assets will remain frozen pending investigation. Good, Austin replied. That gives us time to decide what to do with it all. Valerie joined them, completing their small circle. I spoke with Jennifer Morris again today. She's agreed to introduce us to her baby's pediatrician, a specialist in high-risk infant development who might be able to consult on James's case. Austin nodded gratefully. Every bit of expertise helps. She also mentioned something interesting, Valerie continued. Apparently, Dad told her about others he'd helped over the years, women and children he claimed to have taken care of. I think he was referring to the half-siblings from Mum's journal, which means he knew about them too, Austin realized. All along, both our parents were tracking these secret lives, these hidden children, never acknowledging them openly. A family built on shadows, Richard observed quietly. Not anymore, Austin decided. Whatever happens with the company, with Dad's trial, with all of it, the secrets stop now. Back in the NICU later that night, Austin maintained his vigil beside James's incubator, reading aloud from one of his biological father's letters to create a connection across generations. Truth is rarely comfortable, he read, but it's the only foundation worth building upon. A life constructed of convenient fictions will eventually collapse under its own contradictions. Looking at his son, Austin felt a profound sense of responsibility, not just to this new life, but to all the lives affected by the Winthrop legacy. Somewhere out there were 7 half-siblings who might never have known their connection to the Winthrop name, if not for Elaine's final acts of revelation. There were investors who had trusted the company with their financial futures, employees whose livelihoods hung in the balance, and a public narrative that needed correction after decades of carefully cultivated illusion. The victory, if it could be called that, was indeed bitter. His mother gone, his father facing criminal charges, his family name tarnished, his company in crisis. Yet within that bitterness lay the seeds of something authentic and potentially transformative. Truth, finally acknowledged after decades of denial. As if sensing his father's thoughts, baby James stirred slightly, his tiny hand moving in what the nurses assured Austin was a reflex, but felt remarkably like purpose. We're going to rewrite the Winthrop story, Austin promised his son softly, starting with you. If this story touched your heart, and you want to keep following inspiring and moving stories, be sure to check out our upcoming videos, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us and keep exploring stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will touch you as well, so click on it now and we'll see you there.